Everyone, it's Wednesday, May 7th. I want to welcome everybody to this morning's committee hearing. At this point, Mr. City Attorney, we do not have a quorum, but I don't want to delay, so we will move forward and we'll move things to council as a communique from the chair in the event that we don't get a quorum, but we're going to start now. If that's okay with the city attorney.
That's fine. You may wish, if you have general public comment, you may want to take that first.
Well, you know, I have comment on specific items, no general public comment at this point. So let us quickly go through items.
Councilmember submitted a card for general public.
Here says item 9.
Oh, sorry. No, there's another card.
Okay, it was hiding. All right, Chuck, you will be the leadoff batter for today's committee meeting. So if Mr. Chuck Tennant will come forward.
Good morning,
Good morning.
Chairman Wesson. I woke up this morning and I was wondering what I was going to say today at public comment. And out of nowhere, I thought of Herb Wesson. And I said, God, what would it be like if he were a fire chief, a police chief, mayor, city council president, baseball coach, fisherman, bus driver, pilot, governor? And I said, none of these. I like him as he is, just plain Herb. Housing committee chairman and city council member, a man who listens, gets things done, moves things forward, and does good things for the kids and helping people and making this city a better place to live. And then I had down, where's my newsletter in color? The newsstands were out of it. And, but I also wanted to let you know that the parking violation, double parking thing, Wendy Gruhl put it before the budget committee, and it came from you and Tony Cardenas in this committee. And that's a neat thing, and it's something that would help this city generate a lot of revenue and discourage offenders from taking up 2 parking spots in public parking facilities that are city-owned, especially transit corridors and lots and structures. It wasted space. I counted 22 this morning, just while I was parking my car, 22 violators that took up spots that people would drive around and they couldn't park, and yet they have an army of sheriffs there and they don't enforce something that they should. But the revenue would be another good example of things that can be implemented to generate needed income and discourage wrong things, and without taking away more from a distressed public. And I wanted to thank Herb Wesson and Tony Cardenas in this committee for looking at my recommendation, and I wanted you to know that Wendy Gruhl put it through the budget thing, so you know what? Maybe it'll be a good thing, and thank you so much.
No, thank you. Wait a second, and thank you for those kind words, but what was the last position that you said that maybe I could be? What was on, look on your list.
Oh, the last thing, governor.
Wait, what was that?
The governor. Well, you could be the council president.
No.
But I like just the way you are.
Don't demote me.
No. No.
Everybody knows that I prefer to be called Herb, but if I ever get to be the governor, I will let you call me Governor, Chuck, okay?
I would
All
do
right,
that.
thank you for coming.
I would gladly do that.
All right. Governor.
Nothing's impossible.
Okay. Ms. Barclay, why don't we move some of the items? Hopefully we'll have other members and then we can act on them as a committee, but why don't we deal with items, we'll do items 1, 2, and 3 right now.
Good morning, Meg Barclay with the CLA's office. Item 1 is a report from the Community Redevelopment Agency relative to the status of the Community Engagement Corporation's efforts to obtain financing for the Angelus Funeral Home. We recommend this item be noted and filed in as much as the agency report doesn't contain any recommendations for committee action at this time.
Okay, so as a communique from the Governor of Housing, Community, and Economic Development. We will receive and file the CRA report. Item 2.
Item 2 are reports from the CRA and the CAO relative to the cleanup and beautification program within the Adelante East Side redevelopment project area.
Okay, as a communique from the chair on item 2, we'll adopt the CAO report. Item 3.
Item 3 are reports from the CRA and the CAO relative to the amendment of the exclusive negotiating agreement with the Homewood Foundation for the development of the Museum of Motion Pictures.
Okay, as a communique from the chair, we'll adopt the CAO report on that item. That brings us, let's do items 4, 5, and 6 now.
Item 4 is a report from the CDD relative to the contract with Managed Career Solutions.
Okay, then on item 4, we'll adopt the CAO report. Item 5.
Item 5 is a motion Alarcon Reyes relative to loan requirements and grant funds for tenant rent for Penny Lane.
Okay, on item 5, we'll adopt the motion. Item 6.
Item 6 is a motion Rosendahl Parks relative to directing the CRA to prepare studies to determine whether the creation of a survey area would be appropriate in Council District 11.
Okay, then we'll adopt that motion. That brings us to item 8.
Item 8 is a report from the Board of Public Works Bureau of Contract Administration relative to personnel requirements to monitor local hiring requirements on city public works and construction projects.
Okay, now on item 8, we'll continue that item. Now on item 9, we don't actually have the report, so we want to continue that item, but I have 2 individuals that I'd like to have come up and speak on item 9. So if you could just read item 9, and then I'm going to ask Chuck Tennant and Noel Weiss to come forward. And even though we'll fill out the card for you, Noel.
Yes, sir. Item 9 is scheduled as a verbal presentation from the Chief Legislative Analyst relative to the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act.
Okay, so I'm going to bring up Chuck and Noel, speak on this. What I'm thinking is that all of the documentation will be complete, and we'd be able to have a real hearing, not next week, but the week after. So, but I know you're here. I want to afford you an opportunity to chat, speak, and then when we come back, you can add some information. So I want to go with Chuck first, no, because he was on time, and he gave me a promotion to governor.
To governor.
So, Chuck, you can speak first, and you have 35 minutes.
Okay. Then I have to call him Mr. Weston when he's governor. I wrote down a little thing here, TOPA, the Tenants Opportunity to Purchase Act, a discussion on how it could work. Tenants as a collective can purchase a property at the same price the owner is willing to sell, which would eliminate the loss of affordable housing in this city. How is this done? The city helps the tenants with a soft second. Also, they facilitate the purchase of land through the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, then syndicate or get their money back through insurance companies, pension programs, Wall Street investments, real estate, trust, and funding by banks that would reinvest back in the local communities, which is a federal law. This TOPA program will preserve the middle class and facilitate the goal of affordable home ownership and raise the opportunity for low-income people to be middle-class people. It's a market-based solution. It will also enable people to work together in protecting existing affordable housing and move forward. Under this program, tenants would run and operate the building as a collective, or the tenants collectively would develop it. And if some of the tenants don't wish to do this, they can sell their portion using it as relocation money. This is the objective of TOPA. What's happening now, existing affordable housing properties rented by tenants are being lost. The properties are being sold to developers and land speculators. They evict the tenants, procure their land use entitlements and the right to build. The developers then build luxury condominiums, eliminating affordable housing, tenants, low-income, seniors, disabled, and the middle class. The objective of TOPA is to preserve existing affordable housing and to preserve the middle class, and it's a market-based solution to the growing housing crisis in this city. This committee needs to draft an ordinance, then bring it back to this committee to debate it and discuss it, and then recommend it for approval of the LA City Council. It's a recommendation by myself, Noel Weiss, and a discussion of Janice Hahn's TOPA motion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chuck. Noel?
Herb, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I guess we're talking about the reports coming back from housing as well as from the CLA. And
Yes.
is that right? Okay. Essentially, I think Chuck pretty summed it up very well, but I think I'd like to look at this also from a political and practical perspective. We've got a community of interest throughout the city. We have a unique moment in time here, Herb, where we're talking about one issue that could really absolutely unite the city, from Watts to Woodland Hills. From your district, we've got situations, as we know, where we've got basically the speculators came in, the speculators bought at the wrong time, inevitably at the top of the market. We got vacant buildings, the worst of all possible worlds, the greatest monument to failure, Lincoln Place, just sitting there, doesn't help anybody. And meanwhile, the middle class is displaced. This is the law in Washington, D.C. It has been the law there for 27 years. It has preserved the middle class there. So it's something that, admittedly, it's a little bit new. We can have our own L.A. version. But when we're talking about uniting the city behind the concept of home ownership and putting the council in a position where they could say, you know what, let's do a John F. Kennedy. Let's go to the moon by 1970. Let's increase home ownership. Let's maintain the middle class. It'll enable the council to focus in on these issues and at the same time come up with a practical, workable, again, Washington, D.C. solution. London, Singapore, it's worked there as well. Admittedly, the people in housing or perhaps the CLA aren't necessarily used to thinking along these lines, but I'm willing to sit down with Mercedes Marquez. I'm willing to sit down with the city attorney, and if I have to draft it myself, I'll do that to get the city attorney basically involved. But hopefully, if we can continue this a couple of weeks, then we can get the reports. I can respond meaningfully to the reports, as well as Chuck, and then hopefully the goal would be to get an ordinance before this committee in maybe by the end of July, early August, have that debated, and then from that point forward, we can hopefully get a debate before the city council and get this passed. It will absolutely, I mean, the people in Watts, Janice's district, are very excited about this because the Housing Authority wants to take down the projects. They want to get in the development business themselves. It's the people absolutely will, I believe, want it, and I think whatever problems that exist, I think we can basically deal with them, overcome them, and make it happen.
Thank you, Noel. Thank you, Chuck. Anyway, I've just been joined by the Lieutenant Governor of this committee, Chuck.
The new governor.
Yes, I just got promoted to governor. And I've been joined by my colleague, Tony Cardenas. Ms. Barclay, that brings us to item 7. If you could read the item, and I have a few cards from the public on this.
Item 7 is a report from the Los Angeles Housing Department relative to the 15% ordinance currently administered by the Housing Authority of the City of Los Angeles.
Okay, so we'll do public comment, and then we'll get some response from the department. In fact, no, we're joined now by, I got to give her a title, Secretary of the Treasury. Jan Perry has just joined us. So we have a quorum. What I'd like to do before we go to item 7 is move the items that we moved as a communique from the chair. And how can we just do that in one without going through each one of them?
We just ask the other members of the committee if they wish to join in a vote on those other, naming the individual items by number.
Okay, so I see no objections from the other committee members and no desires to speak on a specific item. Then without objection, those items will be deemed approved. So now that moves us to item 7.
Yes, sir.
And we have David Kissinger, Ann Wynn, and Daniel Swartz. Good morning. I thought I saw Ann. Oh, there she is.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Governor Weston. David Kissinger with the South Bay Association of Realtors. I am speaking here today in support of the staff report on this item. Just as a reminder, referring to the 15% ordinance. Since it passed in 1973, 34 years ago, it has brought online either 1 or 0 affordable housing units as a result of this effort. I note in the staff report it refers to things like the historical difficulty in meeting the city's goals of fostering affordable housing. The report also refers to things like inherent structural flaws that are in the ordinance itself. And so really it's frankly just unworkable, and I think important as the ordinance was, and important and desirable as affordable housing is in the city, this just isn't getting us where we need to go. So I would encourage you to adopt the staff report, move it forward to City Council so that this ordinance can be rescinded and the city can dedicate its resources to making truly affordable housing truly available and truly accessible. And I'll just throw in one more comment on that. As you consider affordable housing solutions going forward, the best way, you may want to consider how the city is going to sustain that. In many, not all, but in many cases, if you're going to do something like acquire, obtain, or build a unit at, let's say, a market rate and then release it back to the public for affordable housing, there is a funding gap, and how are you going to pay that gap? And it's a very important question that you would need to face as you make affordable housing a high priority here. In this case, I think we've seen with the 15% ordinance, the city hasn't been able to meet that gap between the market rate and the affordable unit. So again, that's something to bear in mind moving forward with affordable housing. So again, that's all I just wanted to comment. I would encourage you to please adopt the staff report and send it forward so that this ordinance can be repealed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And with a name like Kissinger, there's room for you in this administration. Okay.
I'll let you know.
Good morning, Ann Nguyen from the Central City Association. I am delighted to be here to support LAHD's recommendation to repeal the 15% ordinance. Although the intentions of the ordinance are noble to create affordable rental and home ownership units, its effectiveness has always been questioned. It's produced nothing but paperwork and not one unit of affordable housing. Repealing this ordinance will remove an unnecessary step in a development process that is already plagued with long and expensive delays. This ordinance is part of the problem of our housing crisis, not the solution. Therefore, we'd like to applaud LAHD for the recommendation and hope that this committee shares our views. Thank you.
Thank you, and good to see you again. Mr. Swartz.
Good morning, members. Just an anecdotal example. I'm a local developer. My name is Daniel Swartz. I just finished a 74-unit rental loft project in downtown Los Angeles, the Title Guarantee Building, which is a historic monument. The financing for my project, which is pretty typical for almost all projects, is from sources outside the city of Los Angeles. When we were trying to close our financing and they were made aware of the 15% ordinance, they first of all didn't understand it, and their second reaction was it's either inclusionary zoning or it's rent control. It stalled my project for 90 days and cost $20,000 of legal fees just to explain to these out-of-towners that essentially it was an ordinance that was passed decades ago and has never really been used to provide any sort of housing. It was very difficult for them to understand that concept. I'm here also to support the other speakers to say it's really time to eliminate this program entirely and rethink how we provide affordable housing in the city of Los Angeles. Thank you.
Thank you all. Could we have the department come forward? Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Yolanda Chavez with the Housing Department. I think as you may remember back in August, Councilwoman Hahn and the chair of this committee, Mr. Wesson, introduced a motion asking that this 15% ordinance be transferred from the Housing Authority of the City of Los Angeles to the Housing Department. What we asked at that point when this motion was heard in council was that before it was transferred to us to administer, that we be given some time to analyze the ordinance, its success, and whether if there were some minor changes made, if it could actually be successful. In doing that, we found that, as the previous speakers have stated, it is a very difficult ordinance to implement. It is very hard for people to understand. It first asks the developer to determine whether they can set aside 15% of new units they're producing as affordable. And of course, it's very difficult for a developer to be able to do that. Once they can't, then the city has the option to purchase 15% of those units, but they of course have to be purchased at market rate and then be set aside as low or very low. So it becomes financially infeasible for the city to do so. And since the ordinance was adopted in 1974, not one unit of affordable housing has been produced through this ordinance. And therefore, we're recommending that the city attorney be asked to draft an ordinance to repeal the 15% ordinance.
So, do you have any options, or are there any other suggestions as to how we would move forward to deal with our affordable housing issue? I mean, once we remove this from the books, I mean, is there an alternative, or?
I think the alternative would be, I think there's been a lot of discussion lately about a mixed income ordinance. That would definitely be an alternative, because I think that it's very difficult to say, voluntary 15% set aside if you can do it, and of course it's very hard for developers to be able to do that without really looking at individual projects and kind of the income levels that would work and still make the a project financially feasible. So unless there's something that really mandates that developers work with us to provide a set aside, it would be very difficult to do something like this.
Well, I mean, given what the discussion that we've had since this was first brought up, I mean, this just makes no sense at all.
Right, it really doesn't.
And I know you weren't around 30 years ago. Can you speculate as to what the mindset was then? What made people believe that this could be feasible?
I think that it was, and I'm only
I'm
speculating.
just being nosy.
Right. I think that they felt it was to move to, this has been called sort of the city's intent at inclusionary housing. And I think for a long time, even though everyone understood that this did not work, they felt that politically it was not possible to get rid of it because it was always perceived that way, that it was the only thing on the books that was asking developers to consider setting aside a percentage of units for low and very low. So I think they were hoping that it would be somewhat successful, but I think what has been proven is that something like this really does not work.
30 years, and did you say not one, or there's been one?
Not one.
Well, it sure took folk a while to figure this one out. I think Mr. Cardenas has a question.
Yeah, what is the current burden on the developers or the city to actually exercise this on developments, even though not one unit has been produced?
Right, and I'll tell you how it is our understanding it's been working, because HACLA currently administers this ordinance. But the way it works is that before you can get clearance for your permits, you have to get sign off on this ordinance from the housing authority. So they have to either the developer comes to the housing authority and says, I cannot do 15% set aside. The housing authority would determine whether they can then purchase any of the units. And then if not, they sign off on the clearance, and the developer pays a fee for the administrative process. And I'm going to ask the city attorney to help us.
Does the developer know what the fee is?
There's a housing authority implemented a fee about a year or so ago when HUD no longer allowed them to use certain federal funds to pay the staff to do it. I believe it's about $100 for a normal.
I think it's a $150 and then $5.
$150, yeah, for an expedited one. But if I may, I wanted to just kind of correct one common misunderstanding as to how the ordinance works, which it actually it's even more improbable in that the housing authority, or if it was transferred to LHD, the city does not have a right to purchase for sale units. It has a right to have the units sold to a low or moderate income household selected by the housing authority.
Okay.
But that has to be at market.
At market rate.
So
Market
then the city
And we
would
would
have
probably
to help.
subsidize it or what have you.
Exactly.
So it's a fee of $150 to $500 per project or per units?
Per
Or
project, per unit.
step up, man. I want to know. I want to
Housing
know how
Authority
stupid this was. I want to know so that this council, 30 years later, tomorrow doesn't introduce a motion that's as stupid as this one that's not going to produce results. So I want to know, how dumb was this? How impactful was this to the industry? How we did this for so many years, and because we were subsidizing it with federal money, which probably could have been better used, right, because it didn't produce anything. And then all of a sudden, when they say, stop it, don't use our money for stupid things like this, then all of a sudden we say, well, fine, we're going to keep on doing stupid. Now we're just going to charge developers to have this stupid process.
I believe we paid $7,400, which is $100.
You paid $7,400 on a 74-unit project?
The other thing is, we're required every time we do a lease to submit it to the housing authority for their right of first refusal. Now, technically, we're not.
And they turn that around to you in 24 hours, right?
They don't ever respond.
They don't even respond?
They're not required to respond. We take no response as a decision not to exercise their option for a rental. But if you're in a for sale process, the title company needs to get that cleared, so there needs to be a response.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you have a 200-unit project, that means sending 200 packages to the housing department that they have to have a person respond to before the unit can close. So I assume there's somebody in the housing department.
Just a correction, the housing authority.
Housing authority, I'm sorry.
No,
I
that's okay.
realize it's different things.
Yeah.
I assume there's someone in the housing authority who spends a significant amount of time just turning around these no's.
Because they, as far as we know, they've never turned around a yes and exercised and put a family in a yes situation. You were going to say?
Yeah.
Your name, please?
John King with the Housing Authority.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
You're sitting kind of quiet back there.
It is true that we have not exercised our right in the 30 years that this ordinance has been in place. Currently, within the last year, we've implemented a fee. As Mr. Blumenkoff noted, that we are no longer allowed to utilize federal funds to administer the ordinance, and so therefore we implemented the $150 fee for the last year, and we have been turning those around very quickly since the fee has been in place. And
So you've been saying no quickly?
we've been saying no quickly, and we agree with the recommendation to repeal the ordinance as well.
Now, what was the budget before the fee was implemented? What was roughly the annual budget to administer these no responses?
You know, I don't have that information currently. I can get that and let you know.
Yeah, I
don't
think,
know.
again, Mr. Chairman, I think it's important that we note for the record what we were expending, what was going on, which appears to be a failed program.
Well, I would think zero for 30
Yeah,
years.
exactly. No, this is not just a failed program. It's a perfectly failed program. It is perfect. It has failed perfectly for 30 years without one mistake of giving a yes and putting a family in there. That would have been a mistake and the converse of perfect failure. No, but the thing is, I want to get a response from HACLA as to what we were spending in federal funds annually to basically create positive results. And then since we implemented the fee, how many fees have we collected? How many thousands of dollars in fees have we collected?
I can get that information and report it back to the committee.
I'd like to know that.
Yeah,
So-
I think it's imperative that we do know that, because the next time a council member gets a dumb idea like this, I want to have the ammunition necessary to let them know that we've tried dumb things like this. And this next dumb idea is about as dumb as the last one, and we shouldn't wait 30 years to find out how dumb it was. We should just kill it, before it can grow.
I think one of the good things that happened through all this is that we did implement the fee, and it brought some attention to it, and now it's going to be repealed.
29 years into it. Something good happened.
Madam CLA, do we know whose idea this was?
30 years ago?
Well, I'm
Yeah.
just wondering if we have
Yeah.
records.
Well, actually,
Neil, I mean, Mr. City Attorney?
It was introduced by Councilmember Nanny Bernardi.
You just, I was just, yes, you do. You've been promoted to insurance commissioner. See, you missed it. No, Mr. Cardenas got here first. He's the, what's that, Andrew? What's Secretary of State? Attorney General.
Yeah, I'll do Attorney General.
Okay.
So, yeah, if we could get that information for the record in this committee, that way, when this committee has to deliberate ideas, good and bad, unfortunately, well, hopefully, we'll never have to bring this one up again. But if we do, I think it'd be a testament to how dumb the next idea is if we have to compare their idea to this idea. So it was Bernardi, huh?
God rest his soul.
Yeah. I got 35 dump sites in my district. That guy had a lot to do with way back in the day. Now I got to deal with them.
Ms.
All right.
Perry? Okay, then, without objection, we will adopt the Housing Department's report. Ms. Barclay, is there any more business before? Oh, I think we have a special item. Okay. And so if you'd read the special item, and I'm going to recommend that we move that on consent, but read item 1 of the special committee agenda.
Item 1 on the special committee agenda is a report from the city administrative officer relative to implementing language and administrative allocations necessary to carry out the 34th program year consolidated plan.
Okay.
Good morning, Anna Mae Yutan from the CAO. Before you adopt that CAO report, we would just like to make an amendment. We would like to replace recommendation number 3 to read, replace attachments J, N, O, and P included in the CAO and Office of the CLA joint report dated February 27, 2008, with the revised attachments J, N, O, and P attached to this report. Also, I believe the CLA will
Is that
introduce...
on top of the revised attachment F?
Yes.
Okay, so if the clerk or whatever makes sure that we have those technical amendments, then without objection, we'll adopt the CAO report with the revised amendments.
Thank you.
Okay. Any more business?
No, Mr. Governor.
This committee's adjourned, so let it be written, so let it be done. Now, you missed Chuck Tennant.
Missed it.